Some men get hurt in secret. They go home, pour a glass of water, sit in the dark, and never say a word to anyone. The world never knows. But me? Marcus Allen had his driver pull up to the curb, lean out the window, and hand me a $50 bill in the middle of my own neighborhood block party while my wife clapped like it was the funniest thing she had ever seen in her life. I still have that 50. Welcome to Daddy's Revenge. Get comfortable. Grab something cold to drink. The people in these stories had every chance to make better decisions. They just didn't. Drop a comment, hit that subscribe button, and stay with me. You're going to want every single minute of this. It began the way most unraveling does. Slowly and quietly, with small things I kept telling myself didn't matter. Sandra had been restless for about a year. Not unhappy, she said, just restless. Like a cat that wants to be outside, but also inside, but also somewhere completely different altogether. She wanted more events, more people, more energy, more. So when our neighbor Claudette mentioned the Hargrove Estates summer block party, Sandra's whole face changed. Marcus Hargrove hosts it every year, Claudette said. He rents out the whole street. Live music, catered food, open bar. You have to see the setup, Thomas. You really do. Sandra was already mentally picking out her dress before Claudette finished the sentence. I told her I'd go. I'm in it. I was a man who kept his word, even when the word was about something that gave me a quiet, low feeling I could not yet name. That Saturday evening in early July, I put on my white linen shirt, pressed my khaki trousers, and drove us 4 miles from our place in Riverside to Hargrove Estates. The street was blocked off at both ends. String lights hung between every house like someone had stitched the whole block together with little warm stars. A jazz band played near the cul-de-sac. There were tables draped in white cloth, a tent with an actual carving station, and 2 bars doing brisk business at 7 in the evening. I looked at Sandra. She was already glowing, and we hadn't even parked yet. Don't just stand there looking lost, she said as we walked in. I wasn't lost. I was reading the room. Those are 2 very different things, and that difference would matter enormously before the night was done. Claudette found us within 3 minutes, dressed in something orange and dramatic that announced her arrival before she did. She kissed Sandra on the cheek and pulled her immediately toward a cluster of women standing near the flower arrangement station like she'd been waiting to do exactly this all week. Thomas, she said over her shoulder, Marcus is somewhere by the grill. He'll take care of you. She disappeared with my wife into the crowd, and I stood for a moment with a glass of lemonade, taking in the full picture. I was good at that, taking in pictures. 16 years in commercial risk assessment will do that to a man. You stop looking at surfaces and start reading what is underneath them. The party was beautiful, no question, but beauty is not the same as warmth, and Hargrove Estates had more of the first than the second. I spotted Marcus Allen at exactly 8:22 in the evening. I know because I had just checked my phone. My business partner Raymond had sent a message about a zoning document tied to our Denton Street project that he said couldn't wait until Monday. Raymond believed nothing could wait until Monday. He had the energy of a man who treated every Tuesday like it was somehow already behind schedule. I was typing back that it absolutely could wait when I heard Sandra laugh. Not the laugh she used at church. Not the one she used when Claudette said something mildly funny. Her real laugh. The one she'd used when we were dating and everything was still new enough to feel like a gift. I looked up. He was standing near the ice sculpture like he'd been positioned there by someone who arranged parties for a living and wanted one centerpiece for every corner. Marcus Allen. Everything about him was saying something expensive without having to speak. His shirt was untucked in that very deliberate way that cost money to pull off. His watch caught the string lights in a way that suggested it was used to catching light. He was tall, easy, and carrying the specific relaxed confidence of a man who had never once in his life needed to wait in a line he didn't want to be in. My wife was looking at him the way you look at something that surprises you. Not the polite look. The other one. The one where everything else goes soft around the edges. I kept my face still. I was excellent at keeping my face still. I found our host, Marcus Hargrove, near the grill. He was a decent man, big laugh, big handshake, the kind of person who made everyone feel like a guest worth having. "You finally made it, Thomas. Sandra dragged you out of your office?" "Something like that," I said. Marcus Hargrove was my neighbor in the loosest sense. We waved. We chatted briefly over fences. I knew he was good people. I also knew, watching his eyes track across his own party with quiet pride, that he genuinely had no idea what was developing in his own backyard tonight. He handed me a plate and pointed me toward the carving station. "Get the brisket, Thomas. Man drove it in from Lockhart this morning." I got the brisket. I stood near the buffet table, eating very good brisket, watching my wife move through a party like she had been set free into exactly the environment she had always wanted. And I watched Marcus Allen move through it like he owned it. Because in a very real sense, he did. Raymond would have told me to stop standing near the brisket looking like I was doing tax preparation in my head. "Thomas, stop calculating, man. Sometimes things just are what they are." He'd said that to me once about a property deal. He was wrong. He'd said it to me once about leftover barbecue. He was also wrong. But Raymond was at home with his Sunday, and I was here, and I was patient because patience had always served me better than almost any other quality I possessed. I didn't fully understand yet just how much I was going to need it in the next 90 seconds. I was setting my plate down on a nearby table when Marcus Allen walked directly toward me. Not in my direction, toward me, with the specific intention of a man who has decided something and is now executing on the decision. "You're Sandra's husband." Again, not a question. A conclusion he had already reached and was simply announcing to me. "Thomas Allen," I said, and held out my hand. He looked at it briefly, the way someone glances at a door they've already decided to open before shaking it. Marcus Allen, the smile arrived next, wide and practiced, broken in over many years and many rooms. "I've heard about you. She says you're always working." I smiled back. "Somebody has to." He laughed like I'd said something charming and harmless, the way you laugh at something that isn't actually a threat because you've already decided it isn't. Sandra appeared beside him almost immediately, as if the party had reorganized itself around this particular grouping. Her cheeks had color that had nothing to do with the heat and everything to do with the company. "Thomas," she said, my name in her mouth, like a parenthesis, like I was a small necessary detail in a much bigger sentence. "Marcus was just telling me about the house he's building outside of Fredericksburg," she said. 40 acres. A private lake. He glanced back at me with a look I had seen before on the faces of men who had decided they were the most important person in a room and were simply waiting for everyone else to catch up to. That information. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket with the ease of man who does everything with ease. His wallet was slim, the color of charcoal, the kind sold in places where the price tag is considered in poor taste. He produced a bill. He held it out to me between two fingers. "For the valet," he said pleasantly, and then came to smile. "The real one. The one with the audience built in." I counted 16 people near enough to see it clearly. He tilted his chin towards Sandra. "Don't worry about getting home, friend. I'll make sure she has a good night." The word friend hit like a door closing. I looked at the bill. I looked at Sandra. She was looking at the ground. Not at me. Not at him. Just at the ground. At her own shoes, as though the answer to something she hadn't asked out loud was buried somewhere in the grass beneath her feet. 12 years. I had loved this woman for 12 years. And in this moment, she was standing 6 inches away from me and looking at the ground. That was the thing, not the bill. Not Marcus Allen and his Fredericksburg lake house. Sandra looking at the ground. I took the bill. Slowly, carefully, the way you handle something you intend to keep. I folded it once, edges straight, clean, and precise, and tucked it into the breast pocket of my linen shirt. Smoothed it flat with one hand. "Thank you, Marcus," I said. Very thoughtful. My voice was calm. Not performed calm. Actual calm, the kind that lives on the other side of a decision already made. I shook his hand. Unhurried. I nodded once at my wife, who still had not looked up. Then I walked to the valet stand at the end of the blocked-off street without turning around. Not once. The drive back to Riverside took 11 minutes. No radio. No podcasts. Just the sound of the road and the particular silence of a man doing the kind of thinking that takes up all available space. I pulled into the driveway of our house on Calder Street at 9:47. Turned off the engine. Saturday. The front porch light was on. Sandra had set it to a timer. Years ago when the kids were young and we still had a reason to leave lights on for people coming home. I made 2 phone calls sitting in that car. The first was to Raymond. He picked up on the first ring, which told me he had been watching his phone, which told me he had suspected something was wrong before I did, which told me that Raymond, for all his Monday urgency, was a better friend than I sometimes remember to say out loud. "You're calling me from a party," he said. "I left the party." Long pause. "Thomas, where's Sandra?" "Still there." Even longer pause. The kind where someone is doing arithmetic and not enjoying the answer. "Pull the Meridian file," I said. "The one I asked you to hold in February. The one you told me not to ask about." His voice went quiet. "Yeah." I said yeah. The second call was to my attorney, Denise Ford. At 9:51 on Saturday night, she picked up on the second ring because that is what I had always paid her for, and because Denise Ford had built her entire career on being available when other attorneys were not. She was brief, focused, and asked exactly 3 questions, each of which I answered with complete clarity. The third call I will tell you about later. But I will say this. By the time I made that third call, Marcus Allen's Fredericksburg land deal, the one he had been working on for 7 months and had not yet finalized, was going to become considerably more complicated by Tuesday morning. I sat in my driveway for 9 more minutes after the calls were done. Just me, in the dark, and the folded $50 bill sitting in my breast pocket. Marcus Allen had thought he was giving the parking lot attendant a tip. What he had actually done was hand me the opening move of a game he did not know he had started against a man whose entire professional life was built on understanding risk and who had been quietly, methodically, and completely legally watching the board for the past 4 months. I went inside, made tea, sat at the kitchen table under the lights Sandra had picked out at that craft fair in Cedar Creek 2 summers ago, the one I thought was too ornate and she had been right about, and I sat there until 1 in the morning. Planning. Sandra Burns would come home Sunday to find the locks on the house had been changed while she was deciding what her life was. Marcus Allen, 40 acres, private lake, and all, was going to receive a very precise message before the week was out. Neither of them had any real idea who Thomas Allen actually was. They were about to find out in the most expensive way possible. There is a particular quality of Sunday morning that exists only in houses that have recently become quieter than they were before. The coffee tastes cleaner somehow, like the air has better circulation, like something that was using up the oxygen is no longer doing so. I made my coffee at 5:53, and it tasted like a decision I had no regrets about. Sandra had texted at 12:41. I knew because the screen lit up the kitchen ceiling while I was still at the table. The text said, "Staying at Claudette's. Need to think. Talk tomorrow." I read it standing at the counter. Put my phone down. Finish my tea. Staying at Claudette's. Sure. The thing about small lies, and I say this as a man who has spent 17 years in commercial risk assessment, where the small hidden things are almost always the things that bring the whole structure down, is that they're the ones people tell when they believe the person they're telling them to is not paying enough attention. Sandra had decided I was not paying attention. She was updating her model of me. The update was incorrect. I showered, pressed my navy trousers and my light gray button-down, the one Raymond called my Serious Thomas shirt, the one that meant someone was about to receive information they had not budgeted for emotionally, and I drove to our Denton Street office at 6:45, stopping first at the house on Calder Street to meet the locksmith I had scheduled for 6:15. His name was Dale. Dale was methodical, quiet, and entirely uninterested in why a man in pressed trousers needed every lock in his house changed before the sun had cleared the tree line. He just changed them. Front door, back door, side garage entrance, the coated panel on the mudroom. All of it. Fresh keys? Dale asked, holding up the new set on a plain ring. Just the one set, I said. Dale nodded with the expression of a man who had done this particular job on a Saturday morning enough times to have fully stopped forming opinions about it. I gave him a generous tip. Folded. Crisp. I was in a settled, clear-headed sort of mood. Raymond was at the office when I arrived at 7:14. He had 2 coffees and the Meridian file open on the desk when I walked in, which told me everything I needed to know about how seriously he had taken the phone call from the night before. Raymond believed Sunday mornings were sacred. The fact that he was sitting in a rolling chair under fluorescent lights with a bran muffin and a folder before 7:30 meant he had not slept more than 3 hours. "You look terrible," I said. "You look like you were about to reprise someone's entire future," he said, sliding a coffee toward me. "So I think we are both exactly where we belong." I sat down. He slid the Meridian file across without me asking. I opened it. 22 pages, single-spaced, 4 months of careful, thorough, completely legal documentation that I had commissioned in March and instructed Raymond to hold until I asked for it, or until I turned out to be wrong. I had not turned out to be wrong. "How serious is it?" Raymond asked. I turned to page 6, then to page 14, then to the final page where Denise Ford's preliminary notes were clipped to a 1-page summary that would have made Marcus Allen's breakfast settle very differently had he read it over his morning coffee that Sunday. "Remember the Fredericksburg deal?" I said. "The land acquisition he has been working on for 7 months?" Raymond nodded. "Guess who has held the senior lien position on the note backing that acquisition for the past 2 years?" Raymond looked at me. "I'll let him look." "Say it, Thomas," he said. His voice had gone very flat in the way that meant he was doing math and the math was answering itself. "Through a commercial lending structure, held inside a Cayman-registered holding entity, because I'm not disorganized about these things," I said pleasantly. "Yes, effectively me." Raymond sat back and let out a long, slow breath. Not a laugh exactly. More the sound of a man watching something very large and very inevitable arrive exactly on schedule. "He gave you $50 at a block party," Raymond said. "He did. And you hold the note on his land deal." "I do." "Thomas." He set both hands flat on the desk between us. "Does he know? Marcus Allen knows his lending structure through a commercial bank in Houston that routes through a holding entity whose beneficial owner has never been introduced to him at a Saturday evening block party or anywhere else." I straightened my cuffs. "So no, he does not know. Not yet." Sunday was still young. Denise Ford arrived at 8:45 with her reading glasses on and the focused, clean energy of a woman who had never in 30 years of practice allowed a situation to become more complicated than necessary. She shook my hand, sat down across from me, opened her portfolio, and said simply, "Tell me what happened." So I did. I told her about the block party, the ice sculpture. Sandra's real laugh pointed at someone else. I told her about Marcus Allen and his Fredericksburg story and the way he'd produced the 50 like it was a prop in a scene he'd rehearsed. I told her about Sandra looking at the ground and the 11-minute drive home and the folded bill in my breast pocket. Denise listened without any expression at all, which is how I always knew the situation was being taken seriously. Denise had an expression for most things. She reserved blankness for the ones that required her full attention. "The bill is in your possession," she said when I finished. "Breast pocket of my linen shirt." I nodded. "Folded once." She wrote something. "Your property, the house on Calder Street. What is the title structure?" "In my name since 2018, I said. Sandra signed a quitclaim during the refinance. She was visiting her sister in Galveston that weekend. Signed electronically." Denise almost smiled. "Of course she did." She made another note. "Right. Here is where we are. What Denise told me next is between the two of us for the moment, but I will say this. When she left the office at 10:20, Marcus Allen's 40-acre dream in the hill country had a pressure point in it so small and so precise that he would not feel it until it was already doing its work. At 11:14, my personal cell rang. "Sandra." I let it ring 4 times, not to be difficult, but because I was finishing a memo to Raymond about the Denton Street timeline. That required complete sentences. Then I picked up. "Thomas." Her voice was tight, organized, like she had rehearsed this opening from 3 angles and settled on the direct one. "Sandra," I said warmly. Same energy I used with difficult counterparties. "We need to talk," she said. "I completely agree," I said. "I'm going to come home this afternoon." "Ah," I said about that. Pause. "What?" "You may want to call a locksmith before you make the drive home from wherever you actually stayed last night," I said. "Claudette's." She started. I let her finish the word. "The locks on Calder Street were changed this morning. Sandra." Dale came at 6:15. The house is in my name. Has been since 2018. You'll recall the refinance. You were in Galveston. You signed electronically. There was silence on the other end of the line. The complete kind. The kind that has a texture. Thomas, what did you do? Not a question. A recalibration. I changed the locks on my house. Sandra. I said the way I said. Everything important. Quietly. Without decoration. Is my house. Has been for 6 years. Denise says hello, by the way. You called Denise. Her voice went up a half step. Called her last night, I said. She is very responsive. That is what I have always appreciated about her. Thomas, this is insane. You cannot just. Raymond will coordinate with your sister about your things, I said. You are welcome to take whatever you would like from the house. Except the light fixture in the kitchen. The one from the Cedar Creek Craft Fair. I was wrong about that one. It suits the room perfectly. I hung up, sat still for approximately 30 seconds. Then I allowed myself one open palm on the surface of the desk. Just one. A man has to have limits. Raymond knocked and came in at 1:45 with the expression of someone who has witnessed something large and is still deciding what category to file it under. She called me, he said. I figured. Twice. What did you say? First call was in a meeting, he said, picking up a pen. Second call I was still in a meeting. Good man, Ray. He set the pen down. Thomas. She sounded scared. He said it directly. That was Raymond. Always direct when it mattered. I looked out the window at the street below. A man was walking a small dog on a very long leash. 2 teenagers were sitting on a bench eating something from a paper bag. Regular Sunday. Regular people. Regular lives moving through an unremarkable afternoon with no idea what was happening 4 floors up. I know, I said, and I want you to understand. Something about me, because it matters for everything I am about to tell you. I was not happy about any of this. There is no version of watching your wife aim her real laugh at another man at a party while you stand near a brisket carving station with a lemonade that feels good. No planning, no documentation, no Cayman holding structure patches over the specific kind of bruise that comes from watching someone you have loved for 12 years look at the ground because she cannot look at you. But I was a man with a plan, and the plan was not finished. The third call, Raymond said. The one you made last night from the car. He looked at me steadily. When does that part happen? I looked at my watch. I started. My desk phone rang. The direct line. The one that only 7 people in the world had the number to. I looked at the display. Houston area code. Garrett Wills. I looked at Raymond. He looked at me. Now, I said, that part happens now. I picked up the phone. Here is how Marcus Allen's Sunday morning had gone. I would piece this together. From sources I am not yet going to name. He had woken up at his house in Hardgrove Estates sometime around 9 because men like Marcus Allen operate on a schedule that the world adjusts to rather than the other way around. He had coffee. He probably stood on his back porch admiring whatever the back porch of a Hardgrove Estates home looks like on a clear July morning. He checked whatever Marcus Allen checked on a regular Sunday. And then, at precisely 11:41, his commercial lending contact in Houston, a man named Garrett Wills, who dealt exclusively through a structured holding arrangement and had never once in 2 years of correspondence introduced the name Thomas Allen, sent him a message. 11 sentences. I know exactly what those 11 sentences said because I drafted them myself at 12:54 Saturday night, sitting at my kitchen table under Sandra's craft fair light. I will tell you what they said in a moment. First, let me tell you what Marcus Allen did when he read them. Because Claudette, who had far more connections than she let on at neighborhood block parties, told me later that Marcus Allen had called his own attorney 4 times between noon and 1:45 for calls in under 2 hours on a Sunday from a man who hosted string light parties and handed $50 bills to strangers. For calls to his attorney on a Sunday. Sit with that for a moment. The 11 sentences informed Marcus Allen that his senior lender was exercising a right contained in Section 9 of a commercial agreement Marcus had executed 26 months ago in a conference room in Houston after a lunch that had gone very pleasantly, and therefore perhaps not as carefully as it should have. The right was simple: a full review of all collateral tied to the Fredericksburg acquisition, triggered by a covenant clause that Marcus had initialed without reading closely enough. Not a seizure, not a hostile action, just a review. A thorough, methodical, very well-timed review. In commercial real estate, a senior lender calling for a collateral review at the 7-month mark of an acquisition is not technically an emergency, but it is the kind of thing that makes your other capital partners ask questions. It is the kind of thing that causes closing timelines to slip. It is the kind of thing that people notice and mention to other people. It is, in short, the sound of a door that was fully open, shifting a few degrees toward closed. By Monday afternoon, 2 of Marcus Allen's 3 co-investors in the Fredericksburg deal had made calls. Not panic calls, careful calls. The kind careful people make when they have noticed that a door has shifted and want to understand why. He still had no idea who was on the other end of the Houston number. Monday morning had its own particular texture. The texture of a Tuesday that is deciding what kind of week it is going to be. I made my coffee at 5:48 and Raymond was already at the office when I arrived at 7, which was the second time in 2 days he had done this, which meant he had also made a decision and was committed to it. Marcus Allen called my office line at 9:22. I let it go to the message service. 18 seconds. This is Marcus Allen. I am trying to reach the principal on a Houston commercial note. Please return my call. It's important. From the man who had handed me a $50 bill in front of 16 neighbors like I was there to park his car. I played it once. Made my second coffee. Then I called Denise. He left a message, I said. I know, Denise said. His attorney called mine at 8. They want to sit down. I looked at the $50 bill, lying flat on my desk, unfolded now, edges crisp, centered on the surface like a document that had been framed and then decided against. Wednesday, I said. My office. 9 a.m. And Denise. Make sure his attorney is given the full name when they confirm. Allen Commercial Holdings, the parent structure, and the individual principal. Thomas Allen. She paused. Are you certain? I'm certain. Good, she said. I'll have it scheduled. The silence that followed on the partner's end was the sound of a man suddenly aware of where he was standing. By Monday evening, I had received a voicemail from Sandra. 43 seconds. I timed it. The first 28 seconds were precise and composed, the version of Sandra that organized things, that planned exits, that had clearly scripted this in the car before pressing call. The last 15 seconds were something else, something quieter, something that did not have a script, something that sounded like the Sandra I had married at that small chapel in Beaumont. On a Saturday afternoon in November 12 years ago, when she had gripped my hand so tightly during the ceremony that I could feel every one of her fingers and thought, this woman is holding on to something true. Turns out true had a footnote. I deleted the voicemail. I drove home to Calder Street, sat in the car, and took out the $50 bill and held it in the last of the July light coming through the windshield. Marcus Allen's fingerprints were on this thing. So was my marriage. So was everything that came next. I put it back in my pocket, went inside, poured a small glass of the good bourbon. Tomorrow was Tuesday, and Tuesday was going to be the day Sandra found out that the house she had assumed she was going home to have been quietly, legally, and entirely correctly handled. And Marcus Allen was going to have a Wednesday morning he had not prepared for. Neither of them had. Tuesday arrived the way every day arrives that is about to matter. Without announcement, without ceremony, just the same coffee, the same morning light, the same still house that had stopped pretending to be something it was no longer. Sandra called at 10:40. I answered on the third ring. Thomas. Her voice had lost the rehearsed layer. What was left underneath, it was something more honest and more difficult to listen to, which was probably why she had spent a day building the rehearsed version first. Sandra. I said it without weight. Just her name. There was a pause. Then she said, I made a mistake. No, I'm sorry. No, I don't know what I was thinking. Just that. The plain version. The one with no softening built in. I had spent 2 days deciding how to carry that sentence when it came. I knew, I said. The line went quiet. Not the hard kind. The kind that carries things. Thomas. Her voice was careful. It was smaller than her regular voice. The house in Beaumont, she started. Your mother's house, I said. It is in your name. Has been for 3 years. You picked it out. Remember? That weekend, I was supposed to be at the conference in Dallas. She had believed I was in meetings. I had been at a title company. It is yours. Denise will handle the rest. You'll be fine, Sandra. More than fine. After everything, I said, because you were my wife for 12 years. That means something. It still means something. Even right now. Maybe especially right now. I paused. It just does not mean what it used to. I heard her breath change. Just slightly. The small involuntary sound of someone receiving something they know they have not earned and do not know what to do with the weight of it. I'm sorry, Thomas, she said. And this time I believed her. Too late is still true. I know, I said. Take care of yourself, Sandra. I set the phone down on the desk and sat with it for 30 seconds. Then I allowed myself one fist on the desk. Just one. A man has to have his limits. What happened to Marcus Allen between Sunday night and Wednesday morning is best understood as a physics problem. When you are a man like Marcus Allen with his estates and his private lake plans and the deep, unexamined confidence of someone who has never once in his adult life handed someone $50 and had it matter, you operate on assumptions. The assumptions are structural. Knock one out and the rest do not simply tilt. They clarify. They show you what they were always made of. By Tuesday afternoon, 2 of his 3 Fredericksburg co-investors had requested formal calls. His commercial bank had flagged the review for a senior conversation about the note structure. His acquisition attorney had sent him a 4-paragraph email that read, in the polite language of acquisition attorneys, like a man who was carefully managing his own exposure. Raymond texted me Tuesday evening. Both co-investors. Review is proceeding. His attorney called Denise again. I texted back, good. Stay on it. He walked into Allen Commercial Holdings at 9:54 Wednesday morning. Still tanned. Still wearing the same watch that had caught the string lights on Saturday night. Still moving the way men move who have spent their lives in rooms that rearrange themselves to accommodate their presence. I will give Marcus Allen this. He walked in like a man who had been through a difficult 3 days and was not going to let 3 difficult days change his posture. His attorney, a woman named Patricia Reeve from a well-regarded Houston firm, walked in 2 steps behind him, carrying the expression of someone who had done thorough preparation and found the preparation unsettling. Marcus Allen saw me. He went completely still, not dramatically. The quiet kind of still that arrives when the last piece of a picture slides into place, and the picture is nothing like you expected. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and extended my hand. Marcus, I said, good morning. He shook it. His grip had changed since Saturday night. Mr. Allen, he said, not friend, not the easy first-name confidence of a man handing out bills at a party. Mr. Allen. I had not introduced myself as anything other than Thomas at the block party. He had done his own research this week. We sat. Patricia Reeves opened her portfolio and began laying out a path toward resolution. I let her talk. I was watching Marcus Allen look slowly around my office. The framed filings on the wall. Raymond's quiet presence at the far end of the table. The organized, untheatrical gravity of a room where serious work had been done by serious people for a long time. And I watched understanding arrive on his face the way weather arrives. First a pressure change, then the actual event. I reached into my jacket pocket. I placed a $50 bill on the table between us, unfolded, smooth, edges flat. Laid it down like a document I had been holding for safekeeping. I believe that belongs to you, I said. You left it with me Saturday evening. The silence that followed that sentence cost considerably more than $50. Then Raymond and Denise and I spent 50 minutes walking Marcus Allen through the complete contractual picture of his situation. Methodically, without drama, the way professionals do work they have prepared for carefully and hoped they would not need to perform. The review would close on our timeline. The acquisition would survive. His co-investors would settle. Everything was going to resolve itself. He would simply spend the next 60 days understanding in precise, well-documented detail who had been the quiet structure underneath. His Fredericksburg dream for the past 26 months. A man who reads rooms the way Marcus Allen read that block party, as scenery arranged around his own story, tends not to read Section 9 of a commercial agreement carefully enough. He sat across from me for 50 minutes and said almost nothing. It was genuinely the most professionally composed thing he had done since Saturday night. At the door he stopped. He turned, looked at me the way you look at something you have been walking past for years without registering. I did not know who you were, he said. I know, I said. That was rather the point. A pause. Something moved across his face. Not regret, not quite. Something more like the expression of a man who has just correctly located the exact moment where everything went wrong and has enough self-awareness left to acknowledge it without being asked. The 50, he said quietly. The 50, I agreed. He nodded. Once, clean, the quiet acknowledgement of a man who knows when a thing is finished, and walked out. I stood at the window for a long time after that. Watched the street below. A delivery man pushing a dolly. A woman reading on a bench. 2 kids on bicycles. Regular lives. Regular Wednesday. Nobody down there had any idea that anything had shifted. I took the 50 out of my pocket. Held it in the afternoon light coming through the glass. Marcus Allen had thought he was tipping the help. He had handed me the first move in a game. He didn't know he was playing against a man whose entire professional life was built on understanding exactly this kind of risk. The most expensive mistake you can make at a party, in business, in a life, is to look at a quiet man and decide he is not worth a second look. I thought about the chapel in Beaumont. Sandra's grip on my hand. 12 years that had ended with her looking at the ground. I thought about the house in Beaumont I had put her name. The way she had finally said I'm sorry and meant every syllable. I folded the 50, slid it back into my pocket. Some things you keep, not as weapons, not as wounds, just as evidence that you were there, that you handled it cleanly, and that you walked out of that room on your own 2 feet without looking back. Not once. If this story moved you, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing to Daddy's Revenge for more real, raw, and true stories about the people who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. Thank you for being here.